Hello friends. Today we are going to delve into the dark and tragic story that unfolded in 2023 on Shishapangma, a story that has caused an incredible stir in the mountaineering community. Why? Today we will try to understand that. Shishapangma, towering at 8,027 meters above sea level, is one of the highest peaks in the world, the 14th highest to be precise. This peak, located in Tibet, on Chinese territory, remained inaccessible for a long time as the Chinese rarely issued permits for ascents. Shishapangma was the last of the 8,000ers to be conquered. The first ascent took place only in 1964, accomplished by a Chinese team, naturally. Over the past 50 years, only 21 climbers have died on this mountain. This is relatively few, especially when compared to Everest, where 18 climbers died in 2023 alone. Such a low mortality rate can be explained by China's infrequent issuance of climbing permits and the relatively simple routes to the summit. Mountaineers sometimes call Shishapangma the easiest 8,000er. However, in 2023, the mountain revealed its true character. In recent years, we've seen a new wave of interest in mountaineering. The number of unclimbed peaks is rapidly decreasing. Climbers need to set new records. The first person to climb all 14 8,000ers was the legendary Reinhold Messner in 1986. He did it without oxygen, taking nearly 16 years. In 2019, a new breath was given to this race by Nepali climber Nirmal Purja, who climbed all mountains above 8,000 meters in 6 months and 6 days, setting a new world record. Women are also joining this race. In 2023, Norwegian mountaineer Kristin Harila set an incredible record. She climbed all 14 8,000ers in 92 days, breaking Nirmal Purja's record by half. However, her record sparked much controversy and criticism. She was criticized for being flown by helicopter directly to the hike camps. She was supported by a large team, and accompanying her making these climbs possible was the strong climber Tenjin Lama Sherpa. Together with Kristin Harila, he climbed all the 8,000ers. However, his name appeared much less frequently in headlines because he was a commercial guide. Remember this climber, as he will become one of the main characters in our story. The main reason for the outrage against Kristin Harila was a popular video on the internet where her team steps over a fallen Pakistani porter. The porter, not receiving any help, eventually dies. Shishapangma in 2023 became the stage for a new round in the race for records, where a deadly struggle with nature turned out to be not just a sporting achievement but a tragedy that resonated in the hearts of climbers around the world. This video caused a wave of outrage, but in fairness, not only did Kristin Harila's team step over the Pakistani porter, but several other teams followed suit. None of them attempted to rescue him. An uproar ensued. Porters for wealthy climbers are just expendable material, they argued. They don't want to help them, they don't want to bring them down, and this record, so to speak, is stained with blood. And if you're interested in my opinion, this case is notable only because it was caught on video and posted online, causing outrage mostly among people not involved in mountaineering. Every person who ventures above 8,000 meters into the so-called death zone should understand that they might not return and that they are unlikely to receive help. Do large commercial groups abandon their porters? As we see, sometimes they do. Do Sherpas abandon their commercial clients? Unfortunately, this also happens. For example, on Everest in 2023, Sherpas left several wealthy commercial climbers to die on the mountain and descended to base camp themselves. This sometimes happens too. The other question is that Kristin Harila's group was large and experienced and could have helped the porter. Kristin Harila's example turned out to be contagious, and several female climbers immediately started collecting all the 8,000ers for their records. Among them were Anna Gutu and Gina Razusidlo, who set out to summit Shishapangma on October 7th in 2023. On that day, more than 50 climbers set out for the summit. Why so many, you ask? Because the so-called weather window, the time when the weather allows for a relatively safe ascent and descent, occurs only a few times a year. Among these climbers were many who aimed to complete all 14 8,000ers or had already done so. For example, the aforementioned Nirmal Purja and Guideming Maji, These guys were going for their personal records. They had already climbed all the highest peaks and now wanted to do it without supplemental oxygen. However, we are interested in two American climbers, Anna Gutu and Gina Razusidlo, who were competing to become the first American woman to complete the list of all 8,000ers. It so happened that Shishapangma was the last on the list for both climbers. And it was clear that the climber who reached the summit first would take all the glory and honors. Conditions on Shishapangma that day were unbearable cold, wind, and most importantly, a lot of snow had fallen, which threatened avalanches. On the mountain was also Tenjin Lama Sherpa, the same one who, together with Kristin Harila, set the world record for the fastest climb of all the 8,000ers. Instead of resting after his furious race, he seemingly decided not to miss the moment. Because with his popularity, his fees also increased significantly. Just a few months after his record, he had already led commercial groups on Manaslu Dolagiri, and now was attempting Shishapangma as the commercial guide for Gina Maria Razusidlo. Initially, Gina was with the Climbalaya company, and Lama Sherpa worked for 7 summit treks, and they were not supposed to intersect. But upon arriving at base camp, Gina declared that she needed the fastest and most experienced Sherpa and was ready to pay large sums. Obviously, she hired the so-called star Sherpa Tenjin, although this was not entirely legal. It was illegal because the commercial climber is the responsibility of the company with which they have a contract. They obtain climbing permits from the government, ensure their safety, grant access to the climb, and most importantly can turn them back if the Sherpas see that the ascent threatens their life or the life of someone in the team. But here I dare to suggest that money played a role, and the American climber hired a Sherpa from another team. Now it's unclear who is responsible for her. An alpinist from Macedonia was also on the mountain that day and left a grim comment: leadership is crucial in such situations. Clients often offer Sherpas large sums to continue working despite the danger. That's why a true leader who can make the right decisions and turn the team around in time is needed. There were many strong climbers on the mountain that day, and many of them were chasing records. It cannot be said that the record the American women wanted to set was anything extraordinary. These were personal ambitions. Shishapangma was the last for many. Sirbaz Khan and Shahroz Kashif hoped to become the first Pakistanis to summit all 14 peaks. Adriana Brownlee aimed to become the first British woman and also set an age record for ascent. Mingma Ji and Nirmal Purja were completing all the 8,000ers on this mountain without oxygen, but none faced competition as strong as the American athletes. Sherpa Mingma Ji, the leader of the Imagine Nepal team, recalls it was a terrible expedition. I didn't expect it to turn into such a nightmare. Initially everything was going smoothly, but the competition between the two ladies spoiled everything. Italian climbers Mario Vilmo and Sebastiano Valentina said that everyone on the mountain that day knew that the upper section was dangerous. A large avalanche had come down the day before. The Italians were at the first base camp from the 5th to the 7th of October and shared their observations from the 4th to the 5th of October. It was snowing at altitude, but it was warm at the base camp, so the snow didn't stick around for long. But above the 4th camp, about half a meter of snow fell. On the morning of October 7th, it was very cold and windy on the upper slopes of the mountain. The wind, fresh snow and cold created perfect conditions for avalanches. Several avalanches had already occurred on October 5th. People fell from a height of 100 meters but remained alive and even escaped serious injuries. But despite this, on October 7th, more than 50 climbers started moving toward the summit. And here's what the Italians remember: these American climbers chose the wrong route. They headed straight for the most avalanche-prone sections of the slope. It was a real race because they both simultaneously chose different routes instead of trekking and making a path together. Obviously, they were trying to outdo each other. Gina chose a direct route to the main summit, the one Nirmal Purja took in 2019. Anna went along the classic route to the ridge and central summit, but then changed course and went straight up the slope. At 7,600 meters, many climbers turned back and began descending. Seeing the avalanche-prone situation, they decided not to risk it and cancelled the ascent. But not the American climbers, they continued upward. and at 7,800 meters, avalanches began. It wasn't just one avalanche, but a whole series. Huge waves of snow flew down, sweeping away climbers. The first avalanche hit Anna and Mingma Sherpa. The second avalanche came down 2 hours later and swept away Gina Maria Razusidlo and Tenjin Lama Sherpa. The key moment when the first avalanche struck Anna and Mingma, Gina and Tenjin Lama's group saw this avalanche but continued the ascent as if nothing had happened. And here's the main question: what could make such an experienced guide as Tenjin Lama Sherpa continue the ascent instead of turning the climb back down? Unfortunately, the answer to this question will remain a mystery to us. Other Sherpas speculate that it was the ambitions of the wealthy client who may have promised a significantly increased fee. The first avalanche came down at 11 a.m. at an altitude of 7,800 meters, and the second one came down around noon. It buried Gina 80 meters from the summit, which she never reached. Yes, climbers who were lower down also got caught in the snowslide. Mingma Ji, who was slightly lower on the slope, immediately began a rescue operation after the avalanche and tried to dig out the victims. He worked tirelessly, and without supplemental oxygen, at such altitude it was truly a feat. Here's how he remembers it. As soon as the snow settled, we rushed to dig out those buried by the avalanche. When I was rescuing Karma Jodsan, I fell from a height of 150 meters at an altitude of 7,300 meters. We were all very tired, but digging out the injured. Ferba Sanam took on the safety rope. I saw him about to get tangled in it. I managed to free his boots, but then I slipped and started sliding down. I tried to stop twice. I almost succeeded, but my body was too exhausted, and I kept sliding. As I fell, I saw a large rock coming towards me and was sure that if I hit it, I would break all my bones. So I tried to avoid the rock while sliding, and I succeeded. Then I still bumped into rocks, but they were smaller and on snowy terrain. That's how I survived. Mingma Ji indeed survived due to incredible luck and the help of climber Dipon Gurung, who quickly found him unconscious and pulseless. Climber and cardiologist Sasko Kadev, who was also on the mountain that day, recalls the events. Dipon Gurung Sherpa told us that he performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation on Mingma Ji. Fortunately, after several chest compressions and breaths, Mingma Ji responded and regained consciousness. Amazingly, he slowly got up, refused further assistance, and began descending, even though clearly just a minute ago, from hitting the rocks, he had experienced clinical death. Mingma Ji returned to our tent at Camp 2, trembling, weakened, with bloody hands and head. Nevertheless, the next day he walked back to the base camp and boarded the group bus heading to the border. In Kathmandu Hospital, a CT scan showed that Mingma Ji had a skull fracture and a coccyx fracture. This man descended from an altitude of 7,300 meters, from which even healthy people don't always come down. But the American climbers and their Sherpas were much higher on the slope, and there was no chance of digging them out. They were buried by the avalanche. Nepalese climber Nelia Kiani remembers these women. I didn't know Anna well, but she gave me her hand warmers when I was freezing on Cho Oyu, and we became friends. Gina called Anna an Instagram climber, but I think Anna was just a nice girl. After we climbed Cho Oyu and returned to base camp, things went downhill. Gina went for the climb just a few hours ago, and we were planning to go right after her. But the local authorities inexplicably detained us, and then there were problems with the yaks. And although I have no evidence, members of my team suspected that Gina may have instigated officers to stop our team to delay Anna Gut's ascent and set the record first. To get Anna there on time, we had to leave most of the equipment, which the local authorities inspected, and head to the base camp only with what we needed to climb the summit. Both women were so focused on competition that they lost control of the situation, and the whole team suffered as a result. If they had gone together, everything would have been fine. It's a shame that we women don't know how to support each other. Another American climber, Tracy Metcalf, also noted that the competition between the women was intense and the atmosphere was more than toxic. I feel like Gina was very motivated to become the first woman in the USA to climb all 14 peaks. She was very surprised at how quickly Anna was able to catch up with her, considering she was a novice in climbing. Ironically, Tracy Metcalf was third in line. She now has the highest number of ascents on 8,000ers among American female climbers. After the deaths of Gina and Anna, she is closest to this record. Here's what she says. I really don't like all this record fever. I feel like it ruins the experience of climbing. I used to enjoy all the stages of the expedition, the trek itself, rotation, getting to know the team, and so on, but now everything is very rushed. I also think that there are people now who are into climbing, possibly for not entirely the right reasons. Things like social media attention, popularity, bring random people into the mountains. As I've said before, I enjoy the beauty. That's why I do this when I do this. These competitions are not for me. The outcome of this ascent was that 4 climbers in pursuit of their ambitions were swept away by an avalanche. Their bodies have still not been found. Tracy Metcalf summed it up best with these words. It was a lesson, though not a new one. It is that the death zone is not a place for competition. Records mean nothing if you are no longer there. And 2 Sherpa climbers who had a bright future also died in the pursuit of their clients' ambitions. This story had a big impact. The government banned climbing on Shishapangma that season, and the loss of such prominent Sherpas shook the climbing community. There were more and more discussions about giving Sherpas and guides more rights and leverage over clients so that they wouldn't just become tools for achieving records. And recently, Kristin Harila, the same one with whom Tenzin Lama Sherpa set the world record, announced that she plans to retrieve her partner's body from the slopes of Shishapangma. However, this statement was perceived as an attempt at hype. Most climbers agree that this is a futile and very dangerous undertaking which will cost new lives to climbers and, most importantly, Sherpas who often perish because of their clients. The money raised for this expedition is proposed to be given to Tenzin's family. The world of climbing is not just a sport. It is a world where majestic mountains, like ancient gods, demand worship and sacrifice. Shishapangma, standing in silent majesty, looks down on those who dare to challenge her, and sometimes the price for this is too high. Shadows on the slopes, frozen bodies, silent reproaches, all of this is part of their reality. And everyone who ascends to the top must remember the mountains do not forgive mistakes. Such a sad story about ambition. What do you think about it? Write in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. See you on new heights.